Good afternoon. Welcome to Eretz Israel. I'm Avram Shira. A little story about a king who had a son and a servant. They were very close, the son and the servant. And one day there was a question in the palace about a miss in protocol. And the king was upset. And he wasn't sure who was responsible for the fall in the protocol. And part of him said, well, perhaps it's my son. But I don't really want to blame my son because I love my son and I'm close to him and I don't want to hurt his feelings. And, on the other hand, it could be the servant. But the servant is a very loyal servant, and I've had him since he was a little boy here in the palace, and his family is almost part of the royal family. And I don't want to impugn his character either. And so the king didn't know what to do. But in his heart, he felt it was the servant. And so the servant felt that. The servant felt pushed away from the king. And he started to think, well, why am I servant here in this palace? Because I have a meal every day, a couple of meals, a nice room. I have honor from other people who see me as important because I serve the king. But what do I really do for the king? I work in his garden, take care of some plants and trees. And what am I giving up is my freedom to go where I want, when I want, how, and do what I want. Now, is it worth it to give up our freedom for a little bit of honor, a little bit of food, a nicer room, bigger walls, a nicer window? It's a palace, okay, but it's all external pleasures that we've all perhaps imagined and fantasized about. But when you've had a little bit of wealth, you see that a little bit of wealth and a lot of wealth, there's not much difference in whether you're driving a Cadillac or a Ferrari. And, how good can your steak get? How fancy is your cup of coffee? And so these things wear off, and then you start to ask deeper questions like, is this the purpose of my life, to serve this king? Or perhaps I'm supposed to go out there in the world and do something else, something even perhaps greater. And so the king kind of ignored the servant for a while. The servant decided, I'm out of here. I think I'm going to try something else. He packed his bags in the middle of the night and left. And he went out and he went into the kingdom and he explored and he saw how people live outside the palace. And he saw how everybody works very hard all day and they come home in the evening tired and with very little energy for anything else. And sometimes they have just enough energy to go down the corner to the pub and get a beer or whatnot. And so he saw how people lived outside the palace. He said, well, this isn't very nice. It's very oppressive. And they're working hard all day just to be able to have a roof over their head and a meal in their belly and get up and do it again. I think it was better in the palace. There I had famous people coming all the time and other kings and queens and princes and people coming and going, and it was quite exciting to live that life, to know and meet hundreds, if not thousands of people every year. Whereas when you're living your own life outside the palace, you meet very few people. It can be very routine. And so the servant went to a pub and had a few beers and a few more, and he started to get a little tipsy, and a little more tipsy, and he realized, wow, I've really fallen here to fall away from the king because I thought life was greater outside the palace. Something was greater than serving the king. Meanwhile, back in the palace, the king said to his son, where is our friend the servant? Where did he go? What happened to him? He just disappeared? Is that how you treat the king who's given you everything? And so his son of the king, the prince, said, Father, I'll take care of this. I know him very well. I'll go find him, see what his problem is. And so the prince went out into the kingdom, and after a while he found the servant at a pub his head in his hands, Oi, you know, how many beers does it take to erase the pain of a bad decision? And so the prince went, and the servant looked up and he saw him and he said, "Oh, you're here. Amazing. How did you find me?" He said, "Well, I told our king, my father, that, I would find you, and here you are. And we want to find you, and he wants to know where you are. He's worried about you. He's a little upset even that you left, because he feels attached to you and your service, because you've been loyal and a good servant all these years. And there was a little fall in the protocol. And so what? So I said, I would go find you. And here you are. I found you. So why don't you come back? Why don't you come back with me to the palace, and we'll start over. And we can fix everything. And it'll even be better than it was before. Because my father is a merciful, loving person. And he appreciates your service. And he wants your service. And he misses your being there in the palace. And so too, the prince and the servant went back to the palace. And they went into the throne room, and there's the king. And the king was so happy to see his servant that he actually stood up, which is a break in protocol. Kings don't stand up for servants. And the king looked around and he saw the other ministers looking at him. "What are you doing, standing up for a servant?" And yet the servant approached him and bowed down, and the king took him into his hands and gave him a hug and welcomed him back. And he said, just because a little mistake was made doesn't mean that you're not wanted in the palace. It doesn't mean you don't have a place here forever. And if you need to get away from the palace, well, just tell me. We'll take care of it. And you can always come back. And so I think I'm looking here through the Kavanot of Shabbat, written by our Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Shmueli, Rav Beniyahu. And he writes here in the beginning, Adam asher pasha v'chata, when a person sins, and he wants to come back under the wings of the Shekhinah to feel the divine presence like the wings of a bird on your shoulder. And if you've never had that experience, well, you could go to the aviary and stand a long time before a bird lands on your shoulder. But it is something special. So I've been told. And he wants to purify himself. And he wants to go on the path of tshuva. And he wants to throw off all the sins and all the bad deeds and all the falls in protocol. The Rav writes, he should make himself as if he was born today. And forget all the sins that he's done, and forget all the good deeds he's done. To be born today means you go back to zero. Real tshuva is not just saying, I'm sorry about this and that. It's going back to zero. Zero means it's a clean slate. It's a new page. We begin again. And Shabbat, which will be here soon, God willing, if the sun and the moon keep doing their dance, Shabbat is all about that, going back to the beginning, to rest and contemplate and return, not to some imaginary state that I hold in my mind about myself, about being this and that, and whatever honor I think that is coming to me, and all the other silly imaginations that we play in our head. No, it's to come back to zero. Zero means there's no Avraham Shira in the world. I'm coming back today. I'm being born today. And the truth is, it can be every day like that. But Shabbat is the day for that, because God is already closer. He's already paying more attention. The veils have been removed. The filters have been cleansed. The heart has been cleansed as well. And the Rav continues, "V'itnaduto rucho," and I volunteer my soul to God. I'm saying, God, here, take my soul back. I don't know what to do with this thing. This soul is too complex for me. It has 613 mitzvot, and although the Kabbalah says that all those 613 mitzvot have 613 attached to them, so you can do the exponential math if you want to, but it's a big number of things that the soul is designed to do. But the idea is I just want to come back and be a servant of God. Now you say, well, wait a minute, I'm a Jew, I'm a son. And that is true. But when we behave not like a son, we have to begin at the bottom. We have to begin before that special relationship of being the son of the king, a carrier of the spark of the king, and be a servant. And what does a servant do? He makes the life of the king easier. He facilitates what needs to happen. The son, the prince, carries the spark of the king into the kingdom. We have to start as servants. And if we merit, then we come back to the true identity of what it means to be the prince, to be the son of the king, to carry that spark wherever we go, to know that for every moment that we're here on this planet, we are representatives of something tremendous, something gigantic, something too big to put into words. And that's what it means to be a Jew, to be a carrier of the spark. But if we fall, and we all fall, let's go back to zero, start again. Just say, I give my soul back to you, God. You gave it to me, I'm giving it back. I'm saying, do what you will with me. Let's start over, please. I can't carry the sins, and I can't, and when I carry my good deeds out in the open, it's not too pretty. It's a little arrogant. And so I think this little idea here, this idea of returning to the nothing, that's the place where we get to be new. That's the place where Shabbat is the beginning of a new creation. Now, Shabbat, of course, is the end of the week, but it's really the preparation of a new creation. And so, at that point, when we become something again, we can check that something. Is this something real? Am I imagining people are telling me I'm great? Does that mean that I walk around like I'm great? And if people tell me you're bad, does that mean I walk around thinking I'm bad? Because both are exaggerations of that pristine beginning of the nothing, the purity of that first moment. Look into a baby's eyes. You'll see that moment very quickly. So God should bless you all with a beautiful Shabbat, a renewal of Shabbat, and a moment, 2 moments to rest from this war and from this reality that we're in, because this reality too will pass. And all the negativity that's built up around it will pass. We don't know how long it takes. We'd like it to be done very soon, obviously. But we have to be in Shabbat. And to be in Shabbat, it's forbidden to mourn. You have to push mourning off until after Shabbat. And there's a lot to mourn. Every time I open social media, there's some new beautiful young person has been taken from us. But he's gone back to the palace. And so it's not so bad. It's really harder, much harder for the people left behind. So let us join together in the morning and the celebration. And right now we're getting ready for Shabbat, so the light is building. We take upon our soul an extra soul of Shabbat. And there's 3 different stages of that taking upon. It's mapped out in the Kabbalah according to the stages in the davening. And so when we take on that extra soul, we are actually receiving the renewal to begin with. So let's make a beautiful space for that new soul. Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you this week, hopefully tomorrow night on Saturday night Zohar. And then we'll begin again our cycle of Rabbi Nachman's teachings and probably have a few more things to say about where we are in history, because we are at the threshold of a very new, amazing beginning. And the price is the heavy price that's being paid by all the heroes and heroines that are fighting for Am Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom.